Photo backgrounds and equipment. When it comes to working in the studio, we're most likely going to want to have a custom background. And everything that we've discussed so far influences what decisions we make about our background. So we should treat it exactly the same as we've treated our prop styling. And again, we should apply our knowledge of color theory. We need to choose a background that is relevant to the particular story that we're trying to tell, and that's relevant to the style and the overall mood of our image, and most importantly, of our brand. So I'm working with the luxury chocolate. So I need a luxury background. So maybe I'm going to use some sort of velvety texture or satin. And I know I want it to be quite earthy and brown tones, A, to reflect the chocolate, and B, because that's the color palette that I've chosen for my campaign. So let's have a look at a few different examples of what we can use for backgrounds in our imagery. First off is colorama, or a seamless background roll. This is a roll of paper. Now these backgrounds are fantastic, especially if you're trying to create a white backdrop. Often we'll use a white colorama and then edit it out in Photoshop. Paper comes in many different colors and many different sizes. There's 1.35 meters, which is good for product photography, but it is a touch narrow for people. But it is the one you can actually fit in the vehicle. Then there's 2.72 meters, and I think 3.5 meters there beyond. And those sorts of sizes are great for when you're photographing people. The next option is fabrics. Something I do quite regularly is I'll go to a textile store and I'll buy rolls of textiles. They create they give you a lot of opportunity to shape them, and they create lots of interesting textures. They also have the opportunity for lots of different patterns. A common innovation that's come out recently is vinyl printed backgrounds. A good example of that is this table here. It's not actually marble. This is really, really common. And this is a great way to get very expensive textures that would otherwise be quite hard to find. And these are particularly good for flat lays where you have the camera looking down on the shot. But similarly, you can get very, very large versions, and we can pin those up to walls, and we can use that as our background. There's lots of different websites out there, but I would recommend just searching photo background and vinyl. Another option is using found items. So this could be things that you find in charity shops or just out in the real world, and bringing those into studio and building a background out of them. This is great for being cost effective, but it's also very good if you're trying to convey quite like a rustic vibe or something maybe a bit urban. Another option is to use tiling. One thing you can do is go to a hardware store, buy a big sheet of MDF, which is not too expensive, and then pick some tiles that you like from the hardware store and grout and place those onto the MDF background itself. Now, if you wanted a specific tile background, you'd have to, in a bathroom, and you've got to retile a bathroom. It's just not reasonable. But creating a background from tiles from a hardware store, it's probably only going to cost $100 to $200, which is pretty cost effective in comparison to redecorating your entire bathroom. Another option, and I've mentioned them before because I love them, is foam boards that you can pick up from your arts and crafts store. They're super cheap and super versatile. So there's many ways you can paint them. You can spray paint them. You can roller paint them. You can even coat them with different coatings and add texture. You can make them metallic. There's really so many opportunities that you can do with the foam board. The only issue with them is they're relatively small, so they're not great for very large scale shoots. And the final thing you can do is, as I said before, for tiling, we could go to a hardware store and buy a large piece of MDF. At the hardware store, that same hardware store, they're going to be able to mix colors for you, specific colors of paint, and then we can just paint that background exactly the color that we want. This is great in a circumstance where we know we need a particular color, maybe a color that isn't provided for by seamless paper backdrops, or alternatively one where we know a really hard structure where we need to have things lean on it, where things are going to be attached to the board. And then finally, how are we going to host this background? Well, there's two options. The first option is a background stand. And a background stand is essentially two bars that we see here. And then the second and more premium option is a C-stand. Two C-stands put together is a great way to create a very large background for paper rolls. Or alternatively, we can use super clamp to attach a vinyl background or other background that we've got to them and hang it vertically. Or we can place it on a table flat for a flat lay where the camera is shooting down. Okay, that covers backgrounds.